let's go to a guy who spent a lot of time in Seattle covering football. He's been with ESPN for the last couple of decades. You read him on ESPN.com. You watch him on TV, on the mothership. John Clayton joins us right now. John, welcome to the show.
It's great to be in Denver because I don't get to have to watch Mariner baseball.
Yeah, go out to the Rockies. Yeah, they didn't talk to us about it. Boy, that was a great series when the Mariners played the Rockies about 3 weeks ago. It was like just spit up on both of them.
Exactly. Shows you how bad it is.
John was at Broncos practice today over at Dove Valley. John, just give me your takeaways, one or two takeaways from what you saw this Broncos team.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear the speed of the defense is just remarkable, and I think the concern has to be, the left side, or really the left side of the offensive line, not able to handle it. Of course, I mean, the good news is they don't have to face a defense that can rush the passer like this too many times. So it's something that can be fixed against other teams. But what's so noticeable now, I mean, whether it's going to be DeMarcus Ware, whether it's going to be Shane Ray, whether it's going to be Von Miller, I mean, they can just get around the corner and actually, stop the offense and get to Peyton, force him to make a throw and, touch him for a sack. And it's like, wow. But that whole linebacking core is so fast. The secondary is so good. And it looks like the transition on the defensive line for the three guys there is going pretty well. So defensively, it looks good. And it pretty well stifled the offense today. That was the one thing I think was real noticeable, that, the offensive performance was off so much because of the way the defense was. It almost like a basketball game with some of the balls that were deflected at the line of scrimmage.
John has a mailbag every week that I would love people, because he really does get a lot of great questions and great answers. I'm going to mailbag you right now, John. You and I on the Hall of Fame selection committee for years and years and years and years, and we get asked every day, and I'm here in Denver, why aren't there more Broncos in the Hall of Fame? They were in 7 Super Bowls. They won 2. As an observer of Denver, and you know about it being in the same conference, Seattle, when you covering the Seahawks in this division, why aren't more Broncos in the Super Bowl? I mean, in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's the losses in the Super Bowl, and a lot of that predates us being in the room. And I think that, in fact, I was going over one thing when I was flying, and I was going back to look at the decades of how guys have come into the Hall of Fame, and I think there's no doubt there's a shortage in the 70s of guys that should be in the Hall of Fame, because, I mean, you look at the numbers, there are less in the 70s than there are in the 80s. I mean, we're now starting to get to the 90s, and we've got about, maybe 17, 18 guys there. But when you start to look and you say, okay, well, there's about 30, 31 guys that go from the one decade in the 80s, and, now you got some that are there in the 90s. And so you start to look and say, wait a second, there's only maybe about 24, 25 guys. And so I think now, unfortunately, it's going to be, in some cases, the senior committee that's got to fix those right. But, and I'm starting to look at it, whether it's for Carl Mecklenburg or whether it's for Ken Stabler, it's like, I think there were some oversights. Now, so much of it was, back then, the tendency was to reward Super Bowls winners and not necessarily take care of the losers. You saw with the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of the Vikings were missed for so many years.
John, I know you've got shortage of time, and Les has an important question, but let me just follow up that real quickly. I brought up to Les the other day, how about an amnesty where you have 1 year and say, let's correct all the wrongs. Let's put in 20 guys. Would you be in favor of that or opposed to that, or is that a good idea or the most stupid idea you ever heard of?
No, I mean, there's been some talk of that. I mean, particularly for some of the coaches. I mean, we now have the contributor committee, and there has been given those thoughts. But the unfortunate part is, the cost of it may be a little bit too much. But it's not a dumb thought, because, I mean, I know some people in the Hall of Fame have been thinking about it. Unfortunately, the ones that are paying for all those expenses are probably saying no. But it has to be a consideration, because, what we need to look at is like, okay, are there some oversights? But, the big thing we do every year is try to move guys in that have been sitting there for some time to try to get in. And maybe at some point we can look at some of the things from the 70s and 80s and see if there are oversights. And, now looking at some of the things I'm looking at, just like you did, there are.
John, there are people who believe that Peyton Manning at 39, and after watching him at the end of last season, they believe he's washed up. And then there are others who believe if he's healthy, he can be just as good as he's been in the past. You've watched him his whole career. You watched him today at practice. What's your take on Peyton? What do you see?
Well, when I see him hit a deep play-action pass with a throw downfield that looks pretty strong, I mean, it looks to me like the arm, believe it or not, might be a little stronger. And that may be just the regeneration of the nerves in his neck, which is in a continuous process. I mean, a lot of times they say it takes, an inch a year to regenerate nerves. But, I mean, there's times where maybe Some of the throws aren't as strong as they are, but I mean, he looks a little bit stronger. And when you really think of the dynamics of the team, what buys him more time is two things: a good defense that gives up 15 to 17 points, and a running game. And, C.J. Anderson, I think, is going to have a monster year. So when you put those things together and you have a smart quarterback like Peyton, yeah, I mean, he's not going to light it up like he was in the mid-2000s, but as long as he can pull out 24 points a game, which would be one of his worst seasons, you know that he's going to be able to get this thing going. So, no, I think good things. And I think Woody said it earlier. It's like I wouldn't be surprised if he's back next year.
John, of all the camps that you've gone to and you're going to, which is the one that's most intriguing to you that you want to see heading into the regular season, that intrigues you the most?
Well, I mean, I took the tack where I wanted to see most of the new coaches, and I wanted to see the two new quarterbacks, Marcus Mariota, and I wanted to see Jameis Winston. And so I've seen the dregs. So it's like, it's great to be able to see a good football team. I was at Miami, and they were a little bit better than I thought. I mean, that's a 8-8, 9-10 win team with Ndamukong Suh in that, and it's clearly the best team other than Seattle that I've seen. But I was just intrigued because I wanted to see where Marcus was, and I was, and you can see he's a little bit ahead of the game. I wanted to see where they were with Jameis Winston, and this guy is absolutely brilliant, and he's going to be like Brett Favre. He's going to be a gunslinger, but he can see the field and do a lot of things. And so it's been a great trip like that, but it's perfect to end it up in Denver because now I get back into the rally. It's like, oh, yeah, there are some teams with some depth and some good units where, you start to see some of these bad teams. Hey, they're bad for a reason. They've drafted poorly. This team's drafted well.
Hey, John, it was great to see you out at practice today. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next time you come through, all right?
Have a good flight.
Yeah, and if you need me for a longer time, sorry, I got Rex.
No, that's good.
But it's like, just give up. As they say, holla.